Just a quick disclosure to share in conjunction with this podcast. Each of us are speaking to our personal experiences and do not consider ourselves experts and cannot offer medical, therapy, financial, or legal advice. We represent a wide range of experience on the autism spectrum and will always honor each perspective that is brought to our discussions. Our experiences, opinions, and perspectives are all unique and different and will be celebrated. Thank you so much for listening and connecting with us. Thank you. Welcome to the podcast, Navigating Adult Autism, a mom's perspective, experience, and opinions. We're just a bunch of moms with a bunch of perspectives and a bunch of experience and a bunch of opinions. Some days are better than others. So we decided to start this podcast from my friend Kara. Hello, Kara.
Hello.
We were just chatting one day, and I'm sure we were ticked off at something in the disability world. And we were sharing our stories and venting like we always do. And we decided...
How long have you guys known each other? This is Dawn interrupting, by the way.
This is Dawn interrupting the first podcast, by the way. How long have we known each other? 20?
Several years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Several. Yes. So,
Several.
Sometimes we'll just call each other up and say, you know what happened?
Yeah.
And then go from there.
With a few cuss words.
With a few cuss words. Yes, that's true. So then we decided we didn't decide. We were wondering what everybody else was doing in our world because all of our kids are out of high school and they're adults. And we were wondering what worked for them, what didn't work for them. Pretty much ticked off at the system sometimes and how it works with our kids because we feel needs to be a lot of change. And so then we were just recalling a few names and our friends, and we decided to have a dinner one night and talk about autism and disabilities and where everybody was and what worked for them and what didn't. And it led to this podcast. So here we are, and we're excited to be here. Aren't we, girls?
Yes. Very.
So we're going to go around and introduce everybody. Cynthia's here, Kara, Heather, Tara, Dawn, and Elizabeth. And we're going to start by introducing Cynthia. So Cynthia, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I'm Cynthia. And I am the mother of a son who is now 29 years old, and he's recently gotten married. He was born an only child to two older adults that finally got married. And so my husband was a surgical sales rep and myself a food brokerage rep. We've been married 34 years now, which is a miracle in itself.
Yes.
And we're all still married, by the way.
Yeah.
Which is a miracle.
Which is a miracle. And from the time Eric was born, for time he was very young, and he started, starting to develop, I noticed that the gross and fine motor skills just weren't there, and he just couldn't hold things and walk right. And anyway, so, and we never did even have parents as teachers at that time, but he did have a very big vocabulary. So when I'd voice any concern to the doctor, he'd say, "Oh, there's nothing going on. He's just fine. He's just a boy, slower to develop gross and fine motor skills. Don't worry about him." And anyway, but when it did come to his vocabulary, one thing I didn't know about echolalia is when he watched all of his movies and his sentence formations were coming from some of those movies that I was really unaware of. I did right over my head. Mm-hmm. And at that time, at age 5, his favorite movie series was the Alfred Hitchcock series. And we don't really know why. I don't know why we let him watch that, but we did. And his favorite movie was the one of the shower scene, where they have the knife. Anyway, but, and his dad never became concerned about the gross and fine motor skills either. He said, "You're just worrying about nothing." So anyway, I'm from a very large family, and we only had 3 in our family, Kevin, Cynthia, and I. And Eric, Cynthia, and I. Anyway, I'm from a very large family, so we always have large family gatherings, especially for birthdays. And at those times, we would sing the happy birthday song. And that's when about 2.5 years old, I realized we'd go to the parties, and he was fine getting to the party, and then we'd start the happy birthday, and all the family's there, and he would start crying unconsolably and throw the biggest fit he could throw in front of everybody. And I would have to leave the room and go in a room and be in a corner with the door shut, and everybody's going, "What is going on with them? What is going on?" And I didn't know what was going on. I was from a family of nurses, doctors, and teachers, and nobody had any idea. It was like that they thought it was just all me not knowing how to parent him and control him.
Your dad's a doctor, isn't he?
Yes.
Okay.
And sisters were nurses, and mother was a kindergarten teacher, and we had other doctors in the family, but everybody just, anyway.
That's interesting that no one pointed it out,
Yeah.
recognized it.
Right.
But back then, not a big deal.
How old is he now?
He's 29. So I'm probably the oldest mom in the group, and I'm 3 months away from Medicare. So. Okay. Anyway, that's exciting, I guess. Yes. But anyway, finally at age 8, he got his diagnosis of autism, and he also had seizure disorder. So, and then that's when the journey began. My journey began because I dragged my husband along because he thought I was crazy. He didn't know what was out there, but
Yeah.
Dads and husbands is another topic for later.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome. Kara, you're up.
Hello, I'm Kara. I'm a mom to Kelsey, who's 29 years old and diagnosed with cerebral palsy and PDD-NOS. She's got a dual diagnose. I've learned so much from so many different people in the 29 years since she's been born, and I've met so many awesome parents, like these ladies sitting around the table, in the last several years. I thought I'd give just a brief history on Kelsey and how we've gotten to where we are today. Kelsey's life started out very eventful. She was born 2 months premature. She was delayed in most all of her development milestones, other than speech, like Eric. At the age of 22 months, she was still not walking, and later was then diagnosed with her first diagnosed with cerebral palsy, which is brain damage at birth because her lungs were not developed. She received her first AFO leg braces and started walking. And at 3 years old, she transitioned from first steps to early education, which then began her time in the Springfield School District. And her first lovely
Missouri.
IEP.
Springfield, Missouri.
Right.
Out there.
Schools will be another topic for later.
And IEPs. Yes. Well, in elementary, we just kept noticing that she had continued sensory issues. She was constantly sucking her fingers to calm herself down. She had issues with social skills and eye contact, like most of our kids have. The school and the therapist kept blaming it all on her cerebral palsy. So we just kept, okay, let's keep going to therapies. Finally decided to have her tested after going to a seminar hosted by Joyce Hamilton. You guys know Joyce Hamilton?
Yes.
A local occupational therapist that's been doing it for many, many years. At that time, then she was diagnosed. We finally got the diagnosis of PDD-NOS so that we could start the social skills therapies. 2 months after being diagnosed, Roger and I went to Chicago to the Autism One conference. Do you guys remember that? Yeah. It's the bioidentical treatments. Well, of course, we started that. Started the gluten-free and casein-free diet. And then through middle school and high school, as we know, our kids, most of our kids, they don't have friends. Right. Because they have, issues socially, not invited to sleepovers. So that continued, even though with therapies. And then her junior year, we met a very special young lady that included her in her little group. And she finally got to go to some sleepovers and started getting to meet some new friends. Well, then Kelsey then went on. She tried college at both MSU and OTC. Neither were successful, so she dropped out. She was employed with Price Cutter and Walmart, and both fired her because of her rolling her eyes, which was a nervous tic. They thought it her being disrespectful, but it was a nervous tic that she had. Voc Rehab was also involved, but was not much help. Today, she currently works at a large banking information company that she found herself and has been there for 4 years now and is now a shift manager. Nice. Her job is on the phone, so now no one can see her rolling her eyes. Yeah, right. It's a perfect job for her. She's completely independent and pays all of her bills. Her dad and I are so proud of her independence and how she's become a strong woman. About me, I've been in sales most all my career. first in retail and then in pharmaceutical sales, ending in surgical sales. I retired in 2019. In the past 29 years, I've tried staying active in the disability community and autism community. I've sat on several nonprofit boards trying to advocate and educate for our kids. Roger, Kelsey's dad, who has been extremely supportive most of the time with my guidance in all of my endeavors. We have been married for a little over 31 years. And are so much enjoying empty nesting. When we can, we camper travel on the weekends with our doodle, Nora.
Oh,
That's wonderful.
good job, Kara.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Heather, your turn.
Hi guys, I'm Heather. So I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We celebrate 26 years this
know
year.
that.
Yeah, we met when we were 14.
Oh, my.
Kind of scary if you have a 14-year-old right now to think about that. Anyway, didn't date seriously at 14, but definitely we're good friends all through high school. That's a different podcast. Yeah. But we got married. We were almost 22, and so we were married 3 or 4 years, and then we had our son Zachary. So it's just the 3 of us. Zachary was diagnosed with autism at 2. Probably at that time, we could have done that probably 6 months at least earlier. But a story I like to tell is when we were at the pediatrician's office, who didn't know obviously much about autism. He followed her down the hall to get some graham crackers, some little cookies.
Yeah.
And when they came back, because we were talking about, he never talked or did any of that stuff. And I remember when people were coming to the house, they even marked that he couldn't, flip a page on a book. And it was kind of one of the most depressing things, I've ever heard. But anyway, so he followed her to get these cookies. And they came back into the room and she goes, I think he's good. I think he's just a boy. And he's going to take a little time.
Yes, I've heard that.
Or he doesn't have any siblings to model for him.
Yes.
And so you just got to keep, it's going to be fine.
Right.
We'll wait 6 or 8 more months, and then we finally got a referral to a peds neurologist who had the bedside manner of
Yeah.
I know which one.
Yeah.
I do too.
I do too.
I know a lot of families at that time
I may bring up
this
that
particular
neurologist in a second.
this particular neurologist. So, but anyway, so Zachary's 22 now. He does still require 24/7 care. Whether you use the word severe or profound, that's where we're at on the spectrum. He does have some words, he really has, as he's gotten a little bit older since high school, I would say, which he graduated in 2019. We've had some new words and things. Yeah. And so I think progress is still certainly happening. And I'm not sure school really helped us. That environment, I think, is very stressful when you have sensory issues and all that stuff. I'm not quite sure. I always called him a raw nerve at the end of the school day, and we had nothing left. So we couldn't really go, take him to the grocery store or anything like that. Yeah. So anyway, but one thing just, I guess, about our journey is early on, we had a therapist, because we had lots of therapists, as we all had in the house, almost 40 hours a week of ABA and different things like that. Someone had mentioned...
Define. Most of our listeners are going to know what ABA is, but...
Oh, just applied behavioral therapy, yes, that we had in the house. Yes, thank you, Don.
No problem.
Too
I love interrupting.
many acronyms. Anyway, but one of the things we started early on basically a therapist had said, hey, there's this community thing. Do you think you want to do that? And Zachary had been diagnosed for a year. And somehow it just kind of triggered. That was a really great way for us to feel better about what was happening. So we definitely have made community stuff certainly kind of central to what we do.
You're talking about the autism walks
Yeah.
and all. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So we did the autism walk, and then we'd started Shoot Out for Autism, which is a clay shooting tournament.
So tell us, how much money did that raise over the years that you guys had that?
So when we first started altogether, we gave it up after 12 years. When Zachary was transitioning, we were stressed about guardianship and just going into the adult world. So we gave it to a service provider here in town. we were already raising money for the adults that live in like their group homes, basically. A lot of them don't have family support and they're on very limited incomes. So we wanted the money from that event to go straight to those folks. So that's what it does. And when I think it was 180,000 by the end. It was just a family thing.
Good job.
Amazing.
But it helped us. I mean, I think that obviously it didn't benefit Zachary in any way, and that wasn't even the point. But I think the point for us was to let him know, even though we couldn't have a conversation with him, that we were trying to do what we could for the community and try to better,
You
this
felt
thing called
supportive,
autism.
and they were
Yeah.
supportive. So
Yeah, so it was definitely a
Yes,
great
for
way
sure.
for us to cope with
sure.
what was going on.
For
So
sure.
anyway, I'm excited about this group and all the different places on the spectrum that we represent. So
That's what. Yeah,
I'm
that's a
excited
good
to learn
point.
from everyone.
Yeah, because we're all in
Talk
different.
a little bit about your Facebook page.
Oh, so yes. So
Thank you, Dawn. Good point.
We just started in January a Facebook page, Everyday Adventures with Zachary. And the whole point, honestly, is that we struggle to be in the community. We get, sometimes we get smiles. And to be honest, not most of the time. Most of the time we get stares and comments, or we've been asked to leave certain places or whatever. And so, there's a stigma with people, especially adults with disabilities. I think when kids are little, they get grace. And when they're 22 and they're growing facial hair, they don't get as much grace.
Right.
So we're literally just started this Facebook page to share so that people can maybe learn a little bit about somebody and not be quite so, awkward, I guess, around us in the
Right.
community. Just kind of putting it out there that, autism is a lot of things to a lot of different people. So we should know that it's a wide spectrum and lots of people need different things. So
It's a good page. There's a lot of pages I
Yes.
don't
Thank
care
you.
for that are, I think, there for the wrong reason, but yours is there.
yeah,
for,
we're trying to
it's
educate.
good.
I don't really want
It's
a
a good-
picture of myself on there necessarily. Yeah, that's
good,
what
though. It's a
Michael
good
and
page.
Zachary have lots of pictures posted. Anyway, that's our origin story, I guess. Happy to be here.
Good. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks.
To your point, Heather, though, I mean, just looking at your shirt, grace changes everything. You've got,
Oh, right.
yeah, just right on your shirt that you're wearing.
Yes. Yes. Heather has a hoodie on that says "Grace changes everything."
In the summertime,
yes.
hoodie on.
It's cold.
I'm always cold.
That's okay. Okay, now we're moving on to Tara.
Oh man, I wish I wasn't following Heather because she's really good with words.
Yeah, she is good.
But my name is Tara. I do want to point out the importance. We did get our child's permission to say their name. Some of them agreed, some of them did not.
True.
So I am going to use my son's name. But anyways, my name is Tara. I've been married to Jason for 24 years. We have 3 children. We have Hannah, who's 21 years old. I did not ask her if I could use her name.
Oops.
But I assume that she will agree because she's very open and she's amazing. And so then we had our little surprise son who was only 15 months younger than Hannah. We did not
Oh, I didn't know that.
anticipate him. That was a surprise. He is our one who's on the spectrum. He's 20 now. And then we have a 16-year-old boy as well. So just talking a little bit about Zion. He never crawled, never spoke, no babbling. And we just had a really good pediatrician who was just watching him and just sort of chronologizing is that a word?
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. We can make it a
Writing
word.
down, documenting that he was delayed. But at that time, 18 years ago, they really had to make it to 18 months without babbling at all. So at 18 months, I think we got a referral to a neurologist, but at that time, she was just saying, okay, let's work on this, let's work on that. And I was a stay-at-home mom at the time with 2 kids, very young children. And so she just figured out like maybe he can't hear correctly, maybe his tonsils are so swollen he can't talk. So he had tubes put in his ears. He had tonsils and adenoids taken out because they thought it was pushing his tonsils were so huge. I mean, he would choke on everything. So they thought his tongue was being pushed forward, so he wasn't being able to speak, things like that. So when all that was done and he could hear, and we knew he could hear, and we knew that his tonsils had been, taken out, and he had plenty of tongue room or whatever you call that. They finally referred us to a pediatric neurologist.
Oh, I wondered who that was.
That he's since retired,
Yes,
so
ours
we can
too.
now talk about him.
Right.
No, but he was. So we took him in. My husband, for all these therapies that we had to do for Zion, and before his diagnosis, we had him in a lot of speech therapy, things like that. Right before, I think he was diagnosed maybe by his regular pediatrician, but she was like, well, I can't really diagnose him, but this is what I think it is. But I'm going to refer you to the neurologist. So at like 2.5, we sort of knew what was going on, but we waited for the neurologist diagnosis to really get that formal diagnosis, and which was like 3.5, maybe 3, right after the age of 3. And but my husband had to travel a lot to make the money to pay for all these therapies, because this was before the autism bill that paid
Right. It's
for
very expensive.
autism. Yes, very, very expensive. And my husband actually he worked at a local utility company. He actually had to take a job out of Florida to pay for all this. And we, of course, did all the diets and all that. We had special vitamins just to get him. He had a lot of, Zion had a lot of stimming. So we saw that ahead of time. And stimming was like he would just try to, I don't even know what the definition of stimming is. What is the definition?
Self-stimulatory
Yes,
behavior.
it's just like, like he would, one of the things that we really saw, one of the first things was that he would see the dust particles in the air. And he would just, sort of look at the dust particles. And I don't know if this speaks of just that I'm a horrible house cleaner, but there was lots of dust particles in the air.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And he would just flick his hands in front of his eyes and watch the dust come down. But he wouldn't say anything. He would just be talking to himself. And just like making noise to himself. But anyways, my husband was traveling a lot. At one time, he traveled 23 weeks out of the year to make the money to pay for all the therapies that we had to have. But Zion was diagnosed at age about 3, and I remember Jason came home from Florida, and I had called him. He was working in Florida at the time. I had called him and said, Doctor, Fusco says that he probably has autism. And I just was crying on the phone. And Jason, being away from your loved one when that diagnosis comes in, and he just didn't know what to do. He was like, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to work on this together. We're going to, we'll do this together. And he's always been so supportive. He's been just a rock in my life. But when we went to the pediatric neurologist, I remember horrible bedside manner, just very scientific,
Sure.
So anyways, he told us, we were sitting there, did a bunch of tests and said, well, I think your son may need to be in assisted care his whole life, sort of just off the cuff. And we just looked at each other and we were like, what the heck? And we got back in the car and we looked at this beautiful boy sitting in the back seat, just happy as can be, but definitely some delays. And we just bawled because we like this dream. I don't want to make it so depressing, but at that time, when you get that diagnosis, you think of all the things that a normal child, neurotypical child, all the things that you do with a neurotypical child in the future, like baseball season dies, I've always been a sports person, soccer dies, like all these dreams that you had stored
Still
up.
have moments of those.
Yes. Yes,
Exactly.
At
absolutely.
31.
Yeah. And you just think, okay, you don't see the future. Like right now, I can say I'm in a good place right now. But back then I was like, this is a death of a dream of some sort. And our child is right there. He's so sweet. He's so loving. He loves us to death, but it's a little bit of a piece of your heart fell away. So that was a really bad way for that neurologist to tell you.
For sure.
So, I mean, I think he could have handled it a lot differently. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. But anyways, speaking of another mom at this table, one that we had common friends. And when we got the autism diagnosis, my best friend now was her best friend in high school. And she linked us up together and saying, well, my best friend in high school has a child with autism. Let's have dinner together. And we got connected with Heather and her husband, and Zachary was there. Did you say Zachary before? Okay.
Yes.
Zachary was there, and Zion, my son, was there. And of course, they played next to each other. It was parallel play. But we could really see the differences, the differences in the kids and the similarities. So that was just so helpful. And also, I think you guys actually connected us with the Autism Walk. So we immediately went into that community of like having other people who knew what we were talking about, which has meant all the world to us and has,
For sure.
it's just been such a blessing. So over the years, Jason and I have done pretty much everything to enhance Zion's life and the lives of others with autism, anything that we were capable of course. We've been on a couple boards to fundraise for research. We guest spoke at a bunch of universities for just when we were connected to other professors, disability professors. We've spoke to OTC and MSU. Jason and I both have. And then Jason and I both were part of the team that founded the Faces of Autism photo project, which a lot of...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, your kids were all in. So we had a local photographer take all their pictures, and we even had Temple Grandin, which is a person with autism and a
World-renowned.
a world-renowned speaker on autism. And we had her, and we had, it was shown at the Randy Bacon Gallery. It was shown at Mercy Hospital. It was shown at the Mud House and a lot of different places. And I think it was really helpful.
Brought a lot of awareness for autism.
Yes.
Yeah, it did, for sure.
For the community. And now we're just trying to find employment for him. So that will be another podcast.
Yes.
So
Employment will be covered.
yeah. Currently, I am in my Master's of Social Work program at Mizzou with hopes of becoming a licensed clinical social worker. I will not be working with kids with autism because that has been my life. And
Right.
I am doing something else. I love elders, and I'll be working with elders with dementia. My 2 cents is that you really need to find that community, that support structure, that this group of women that support you, and just find your people. So
That's right.
Exactly.
Well said. Thank you, Tara. Moving on to Dawn.
I'm Dawn.
Hi, Dawn.
So, like Cynthia, got married late in life. So I had my son, JR, and he's my child on the spectrum. I also have a daughter who is, I have to think, 23. JR's 26. I think what concerned us most about JR was the lack of language. So he didn't stim so much. He didn't line up any of his toys or anything like that, but it was the language. Then there were some sensory issues. I remember going to a fundraiser for our library system, the library center, and they were making handprints of all the kids who came. And so I know how old he was because it's written on his block, and I can still go and see it. And it says, it gives his real name and 18 months. So the lady coats his hand with paint, and he
Sure, that
melts
went over well.
down.
Yes.
Oh, my word. And if I thought about it, I had taught Sunday school, 2-year-old Sunday school for a long, long time, and had Play-Doh in my house, and he would not touch it. He did not like it. So the lady said, oh, he didn't like that much. You want to try a foot? And so I said, sure, why not? So he didn't like that any better. But there's a purple, blurry footprint of him, and it's still hanging in our library system in the storybook room. So every once in a while, I go in and look at it.
Oh, wow.
So, there were red flags flying by the time of 18 months, but we missed first steps because I was in La La Land, even though, haircuts were a problem. But anyway, I was aware enough that by the age 3, when the public school system has to provide supports, it's like, okay, we'll do that. That's free. Because I'm sure my husband couldn't have raised the money necessary for all the therapies. So we'll go with I always said we did the poor man's version. But so use the public school system, and there was no problem. He got an IEP, no problem. And so they offer services. And
IEP will be another topic later.
Yes. At least in Missouri, Individualized Education Plan. But
yes.
Listeners, you already know that, I'm sure. So we get the diagnosis from the aforementioned neurologist. And my favorite story is this was a regular visit that we had, and my parents were in town. They lived in Iowa. And so I told my parents, you want to go have some fun? Come with me while I take JR to visit the neurologist. So we're in this small room. So you've got, my husband wasn't there. So there's 3 adults, 1 small kid. The neurologist comes in. JR walks up to him and goes to kick him in the shins. Mm-hmm. And the neurologist stopped him. I didn't say anything because it was like the neurologist told him no. You got a language delayed child here. How many people need to tell him no? Mm-hmm. So I didn't say anything. And he looked to me and he goes, I want you to know this behavior has nothing to do with autism.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
and I should have challenged him right then and there.
It was just right when he met him?
No, this wasn't upon first.
Okay.
He had met him before.
Okay.
But again, oh, so you mean it's bad parenting? Is that what you're telling me? Okay.
So he went through the public school system.
He went through the public school system. Yeah. So by the age of 5, he did have a PDD, NOS, pervasive developmental delay, not otherwise specified. And I've got one hopefully quick story. Do you remember Kara when we were in the lobby and Temple Grandin walked out all by herself? She's on the cell phone. And I grabbed the Missouri Autism Report out of you because it had just come out and it was talking about the changes in the DSM-5, how the PDD NOS is no longer there. I mean, just like Asperger's isn't there.
Right.
So I hand it to Temple Grandin.
No, wait.
It's a magazine.
You ran to Temple Grandin.
I did. I ran, and, I'm so happy to meet you. Thank you for everything you do for the autism community. And she looked at the headline there because the editorial was on the changes in the DSM-5. And I said, well, my son's diagnosis is PDD NOS. And so it's going out of the DSM-5, so he's going to be cured, right? No, he's just going to get another diagnosis. And it's like, here's this absolutely brilliant woman with autism. But, of course, my sarcasm was very subtle and very good, but she didn't get it.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Shocking.
So,
yes.
like the other ladies at this table, I haven't, and I'm going to steal a little bit of Elizabeth's thunder. I haven't written a book. I haven't raised, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I haven't worked for the public school system or anything like that, but I really feel my biggest contribution has been that of gossip, because that connection with other people is so important. And there was a while I did send out this autism gossip. Here's what's
Yes.
going on in the community.
Yes,
you know,
Dawn
in
was known as
autism-
the autism gossip
yeah
person.
And
yes, it was very
and I-
clever. I liked it.
and
I use that all the time in the very beginning. Your little letter that went out was how I got information.
It might need to
That's-
come back.
you know,
I told her that a few months ago.
Yeah.
You know, I like the word gossip as opposed to networking because I am just a parent. I know my limitations, but there's power in story, there's power in connection. And I think that's what we're trying to accomplish here.
And where's JR today?
Where's JR today? Thanks to Mary. So
No, that's not
no, it is.
That's what
No, we're just talking about our bios where JR.
I know,
like,
but
went-
it is
yes.
because of you, that connection. So Mary knew that our transition plan fell to pieces. And there's all sorts of reasons why that happened.
Because professionals weren't doing their job. But go ahead. Just kidding.
Do you remember going and meeting with them?
The family could have done a better job too. I mean, anyway.
Yes.
Mary said, you can't let him sit home playing video games all day. Because she's on the board, currently on the board, and was on the board then of SWI, which is sheltered employment, which gets a bad rap, but they were hiring.
Right.
So he went to work,
Yeah. Kara
Monday
helped me
through
with
Friday.
that too, though. Kara helped me.
Yeah, yeah. So he
did
got a
it
track
together.
record. He got up.
Sheltered
He went to
workshops,
work.
another podcast.
Yes.
Topic later.
And so he had a track record. And so then 5 years in, let's give competitive employment a shot. Because, I think JR can do it. I've underestimated him a number of times. Let's give this a shot. So he is doing a janitorial stockroom position for a local company. And we're 90 days in, and so far, so good.
Good.
Great. That's awesome.
Glad you're here, Dawn.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mary.
You're welcome,
No,
Dawn.
thank you for being here and for being in my life.
Oh, you're sweet. Thank you. Okay, Elizabeth,
Okay.
you're up.
Thank you. Well, listening to all my fellow moms here, my hands are sweating, my heart's beating because and now all I just want to do is talk about my kids because
It brings back a lot.
yes, that's really what's happening here because when we're talking, insurance and not being able to pay, I had my kids up there. We were fighting. We walked those halls. We went and we were talking and
Thank you for that.
and I had one gentleman come up, and I can't remember if it was a representative. He said, why should I cover this? Why should I pay for your child's autism? And I said, well, I'm paying for your hip replacement. I'm paying for your kid's rehab, and I'm paying, and I just named all this. I said, you can spend those. How many cents was it that we kind of figured out really was the impact? I said, you can pay for my child's autism, and you can pay for possibly your grandchild's autism.
Yeah.
And so that was that really brought that back, as well as the Faces of Autism. That was the first time one of my oldest, who's diagnosed, really came to embrace her autism was through that with her brothers. But so I will get into my family, but I do want to tell you that I am a family advocate, and it's because of these 30 plus years that I have fought for and loved and worked for my children. I became a family advocate, and I work at a very large disability service provider, which I didn't ask if I could use the name, so I'll double check that with development before I put that out there. But I've been being very invested. I have been married for over 34 years, and as my family has grown to 5 children, that list of diagnoses grew as well. My first was diagnosed with autism, and it was very interesting. I made and broke appointments for a year because I had a neighbor with a child with autism who kept encouraging me. And finally, I decided, okay, I will, after breaking many appointments. Oh, she said one word. She said one word. And then we'd go 3 more months. Oh, wait, no, she said another. I'm going to cancel his appointments. Finally went to parents as teachers, doing that initial evaluation. And I sat next to the mom. I was sitting next to this mom, and she was bawling because her child didn't know. She knew that that a banana was a banana, but couldn't understand that a banana was a fruit. And I thought, oh man, I'm in trouble. My daughter doesn't even know I'm her mother, let alone a banana fruit. And I knew, and I sunk. I just sunk because I knew my life in that moment had changed and her life had changed. But community is what has brought us here. So I do have 5 children, and through that, I have multiple diagnoses. And I'm going to share some of those with you, not to necessarily bring attention to our situation, but in hopes that some listeners will connect, that they'll be like, oh, we have some of those diagnoses as well. Mm-hmm. Three of my children do have an autism diagnosis, and most of them started with a very large lack of language. That was the key for us, was that lack of language. But along with those diagnoses, and this is like half the list, and it's just part of those that I hear commonly from other autism parents. Congenital heart disease, epilepsy, that includes one had complex partial, another has focal and grand mal, the tonic-clonic seizures that we're working through now. We're 3 years into that journey. Autoimmune encephalitis, brain damage, Crohn's disease, intellectual disability, dyslexia and reading disabilities, ADHD, anxiety, depression, OCD, ODD, which is the oppositional defiance disorder, and a plethora. You see my list there, Mary?
Yes, I do
Sleep
see that.
disorders in red.
Bullet points, yes.
Yes, so lots of that. So during that time of working with my kids, I really wanted to be on the front line, because not only did it help others, but it helped me. Because when things came up and there were opportunities, I was already in the door, so I knew what was going on. I spent a lot of time on committees, councils, different boards, starting with a gifted board, to hippotherapy, and just everything in between, anything I could get my hands on. The last 15 years, it really took more of a professional turn. And that's when I started working after volunteering. I still remember volunteering for this company that I work for now. And we were sitting around the table, and we were getting ready to do we're pulling families together to do a big conference, right?
Yep.
And I'm sitting at the table, and I'm with all these professionals, and they're saying, well, we're trying to do this for the families. Where are they? Why aren't they here? And I stood up and I said, excuse me, if you are getting paid to sit around this table, please raise your hand. They all sheepishly raised their hand. I said, I'm not getting paid. And the families that aren't here today, they're working, or they're home with their children, because you are not compensating them for their time. I said, don't ever let me hear you say anything bad about parents again. A couple months later, they hired me. So I was nice. So I really appreciate them, because they get it. They get it. So more of my professional background, I am one of the founding members of Stars for Autism. Very big training, educational and training piece that we do. I've been on the state special education advisory panel, done the Southwest Autism Project, which another member here, Kara's been on the Southwest Autism Project Funding Board, PAC. I've been on the Supported Decision Making Consortium, and as well as those many trips to the Capitol. Currently, I'm an ECHO Autism panelist. Love to do the training.
What's the ECHO? What did you say?
So ECHO Autism panelist, it's out of MU. So it's a wonderful, it's kind of big. So if you're thinking about just Google ECHO.
Okay.
Lots of great information that's coming through on ECHO. I'm an autism trainer and speaker, disability author. I have written and co-authored a number of books. I have a history of doing a lot of these trainings. I have a passion for training, getting into our community and doing those trainings.
And she's good at it.
So love it. I love it. Love doing the Stars for Autism Friendly City Proclamation Project. One of my very favorites, though, was training the police, the EMTs, and the firefighters. Being able to get in there and just have them really be engaged. It was just amazing. Lots of wonderful stories coming out of that. Things that were from our training we did come back to. We would come annual, semi-annual, quarterly. I came back one time and they had a story that a family called in and their child was missing. So through the training that we had done through STARS, that 911 operator said, okay, we're going to send somebody. They asked the family, is there body water? Is there any bodies of water close? And they said, yes, there's a stream. She said, okay, I'm dispatching to the house and to the stream. And within minutes, they were there and found the child in the stream. Oh my God. So that
Always
is,
check the water.
always, yeah. That is my passion and watching them getting so engaged in that. I've also been fortunate to take part in the journey to bring an autism diagnostic clinic to this area. Within that first week of hiring, I said, why don't we have a big clinic? Why don't we? And so every week I'd come in and I'd start handing them material and different things. And I'm blessed to be able to meet with families when they get that first diagnosis and be able to tell them all the positive and the wonderful things and so much about the community. And as I listen to our clinicians talk about all the things that is there for their families and how excited they are and giving them, and being able to sit back and give them all those resources and just hand that to them and then tell them, we're here. I'm here. Call me back when you get to the next point. But I have decreased my hours to part-time because my children, my two youngest, Nathan and Chase, are graduating high school. Nathan graduated this year at 20, and he has very significant needs and now has his epilepsy that we're working with too, very limited verbally. And it's hard to find care for him to be able to even work those hours. But I wanted to. It's my time to be with him. I've got all these resources and this knowledge. It's my time to be with him. And then Chase will be graduating next year at 18. So I'm very excited for that extra journey with them. As my family's needs have changed, we're kind of this new adventure, and we're looking at getting that entrepreneurial spirit, and we are starting something this fall so that my children can reach their earning potential and hopefully be able to open the door for others to work with us, and whether they stay or gain skills and move on like JR, that's a goal, is to really to bring that. So, and finally, I have yet to tell my husband that I have added a podcast to my busy schedule.
Where does he think you are?
He thinks we're out eating again.
Well, we are eating, so.
Yes.
We did bring snacks.
Yes. He picked up the kids when I was making my purchase. He got off work and grabbed the kids after Nathan spent the day in the hospital with his IV treatment and ran him home. So yeah, he just thinks we're eating. Surprise.
Everybody has to eat a snack, so she's not lying.
That's true. Thank you, Elizabeth. And lastly, that's me. I'm Mary. My husband and I have a 31-year-old son on the spectrum. He's high functioning, autism. He was originally diagnosed with PDD/Asperger's syndrome from said pediatric neurologist we've talked about earlier. He does work in the community. Since this is a navigating adult autism, I started where he is now. He works 16 hours a week in the community. He has a job that my husband helped get him. We actually helped him get all of his jobs since high school. Did I mention that he's 31? So
Voc rehab, another discussion.
Yes. I will say that one of the service providers, Abilities First, did offer him a part-time job because they decided to hire people with disabilities I don't know if you remember that, years ago. They thought, well, since we represent them, we should hire a few. And boy, did they have an eye-opening experience with people. I'd call Kara. That's a whole nother topic. But one day I received 3 phone calls from people at Abilities First that didn't know how to handle Conrad. And mind you, he's high functioning. I mean, so he did work there. So that was offered from the director, which I was very grateful for. And he did meet a lot of people there and socialized with some difficulty, but he did okay. And then he lives on his own. He's lived on his own for 5 years. Since he doesn't make enough money and he doesn't have SSI, we supplement him a lot financially because he cannot work more than 16 hours. It's just too much for him. The loud noises, the children, like you had brought up before. And inclusion is another topic we'll talk about another time, but that's a big thing. There's this big push from service providers to have our children work in the community, and it's not as easy as you think. It's difficult. I still drop him off every day and have a knot in my stomach and pray that he has a good day. Mm-hmm. And I think at 31, and that's another reason we're doing the podcast, it stinks. It's not always great. And then I pick him up and I'm like, how was your day? Please tell me it was okay. And sometimes it's just not. And sometimes we still get calls from supervisors. So it's not as easy as you think, inclusion and throwing him out in the community. It's not that great. But anyway, he's doing good. He was diagnosed at 6, very young. Parents as teachers pointed out that something's just not right. He went through the public school system. He had a lot of support in elementary school. Middle school was okay. High school was not great until he went to the BASE program at Springfield Public Schools in Springfield, Missouri. I loved the BASE program. It was a life.
Explain the BASE program.
Well, I forgot what it stands for. It's BASE. Something.
Business assisted.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dawn, who didn't go through the BASE program, right? It's good that you know that. Did you?
Well,
you were Willard. But.
We were Willard, and they had a comparable.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, obviously not as large as Springfield.
Right.
So.
But it was really a good program, which was the last 2 years of high school. But then we had to pick out our service provider employment. What are they called? I just lost my train of thought what they're called. What is preferred called and all them? An employment agency to help him find employment. It didn't work. They couldn't find him. They just thought he should volunteer all the time. So he got his job at the Candy House and Abilities First, and we tried Hy-Vee. That was a little overwhelming for him. I just walked up and got his job at Hy-Vee. I talked to the HR person, and I think part of this podcast is we're advocating a lot for our children on our own, which is really important because we know them best. Then like I said, the BASE program was really great. Then he had his employment. On a personal note, my husband and I have been married almost 36 years. After moving to Springfield when Conrad was 2, and like I said, he was diagnosed officially at 6, my mortgage banking career was over. And I started trying to advocate and think, well, I can fix my son. I mean, I'll just find out and learn everything I can. And I was in the same boat as Cynthia. We still can't sing happy birthday at 31. His birthday was in April. And he's, don't sing. So I just started going to Asperger's conferences with Tony Atwood. I would drive to Dallas, to Oklahoma, to St. Louis to find anything I could find out about Asperger's syndrome. And I was a pair in the Catholic schools for a while. I took a job as a summer counselor at a church program because I wanted Conrad to experience the summer counseling or the summer program, which he still brings up to me that he can't believe I signed him up for that. And it was
good memory.
Oh, great memory.
Sometimes too good.
Too good, yes. So, but there again, I did it for him. Plus, I needed to work. I mean, it's expensive, the costs and everything. So I thought, this would be fun. I'll spend the summer with Conrad in this summer program, and so I did that. And then I got a job at a private school for autism, Rivendell. Mm-hmm. Great school when Carrie Duncan owned it. And Ginger Crabtree was I'm naming all these names, I hope it's okay. Learned an invaluable amount of experience there with ABA and just behavior techniques. And I used them on Conrad and they worked. And just working with kids with autism and helping them speak and talk, it was very rewarding. And then after that, I did work for Springfield Public Schools for 8 years. And I actually did love it at the time. I had great leaders, great special ed directors. There was 10 behavior techs brought in. We had to have experience on what we were doing. It wasn't, we'll train you. You had to have some experience. And we did great. I just worked with a lot of different children that were throwing chairs at teachers and all kinds of different diagnoses. But that was a rewarding experience. But then I have joined, boards, PTA, SEPTA, special education PTA. I went on walks and just did like everything that these other ladies mentioned I was involved in. And I currently sit on the board for the Springfield Workshop, on the board of directors, and on the foundation board. I think the workshop is invaluable, training our children the skills they need. I think in Missouri it's backwards. I think they should start there, which apparently it used to be like that, and they changed it to maybe help learn the skills they need and get the loud noises and the buzzers going off and just clocking in. All those would have been very helpful after high school, I think, and help the service providers as well. Maybe place children, but that's another day. But I love the workshop because they get a bad name, and sheltered workshops are not bad. They're really great. And I think they're a great tool for giving a meaningful, fulfilling life to our kids so they're not sitting home playing video games. So I just, like everyone else here, I've just turned into an advocate, and my life turned with my son, and I just want to help and encourage people with disabilities, including my son. Okay, thank you everybody for listening, and I hope you tune in the future. We are going to have very important topics that we are going to talk about, such as employment, advocacy, self-directed care, Medicaid, teachers, special schools, school districts, rehab, lots of things that involve our kids with disabilities. So we're going to be frank and honest and open and not hold back. And hopefully we will, help you in some way navigate your own child that has autism as an adult. We're here to help and have a frank, open discussion. And now I'm going to shoot it over to Tara so she can tell you where to find us. Right, Tara?
Yeah. So our Facebook page is Navigating Adult Autism. And then what is it?
Our website?
Our website?
Yes.
The word just totally
That's okay.
left my dictionary. So our website is navigatingadultautism.com.
Yes. Okay.
And we will have, I just want to say that we probably will maybe post like in the notes for each podcast, like maybe the acronyms that we're using and maybe like the links to where you can find the things that we're talking about, things like that. So
Right.
we will probably see you next time, or you'll hear us next time.
Right. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.